Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Energy Realities podcast. I'm your host for the week, David Blackman. For better or worse, I'll be leading this gang today through a discussion about China versus America on rare earth and critical energy minerals. What a subject. Holy cow. It all came to a head last Friday. With me today are Dr. Tammy Nemeth from her home in the UK, I believe.
Yes, sir. I'm in the UK today.
Well, that's wonderful. I hope it's raining because you're in the UK. It should be raining, right?
It should be. It's overcast, but it's just actually quite a nice autumn day. Kind of hazy, but nice. Yeah, good.
Well, I like hazy. Hazy's good sometimes.
Yeah.
Irina Slav is with us from Bulgaria. A happy circumstance. We thought she was going to be out with dental appointment today, but that got postponed. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you. It's a lovely autumn day here as well. But winter is coming. Next week. Yeah, next week.
Oh, really? Oh, you got a wintry forecast for next week?
Yeah, I just published a Substack on the topic. The forecasts say that winter will come next week in Europe.
Well, I'm guessing that's all climate changey stuff, kind of stuff.
They're not saying it's climate change. They're too worried about gas supply right now.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we have those concerns.
Yeah.
And Dr. Stu Turley at his bunker in Oklahoma today. How are you?
Oh, doing good. Doctor of humor, I think, is the only thing I haven't.
Doctor of the backhoe.
The doctor of the backhoe. Yeah, me and the backhoe got a workout, so we're having fun.
Well, as I said up top, we're talking about critical energy minerals and rare earths today, and China's crackdown, which came on Friday. They've implemented at least a regime they on Friday said they were going to try to impose on the rest of the world and restrict exports of these minerals, even from third-party countries who have relationships with China. It's a pretty extraordinary act, a very aggressive act on the global stage. The President of the United States responded pretty much immediately, just a few hours later, with a new round of tariffs on China's economy and its exports to the United States. We'll see where that all goes over the course of this week, but it is a pretty major bit of news since China controls 85 to 90% of supply chains or the processing for rare earth minerals. It's a bit of a myth that rare earth minerals are in fact rare. They're all over the world. The United States has enormous domestic quantities in the ground of these minerals, and Greenland has a big resource. Canada does too. I'm sure they're all over Europe as well. The question is, will we ever get to mine them? And if we do mine them, where will they be processed? Because, as I mentioned, China controls about 90% of the global processing of these minerals today, and most of the supply chains as well. So it's a difficult situation for every country outside of China. And, the irony here is that the Western world basically, ceded this territory to China 40 years ago when we gave up on the mining industry in the Western world, thanks to the environmentalist movement. And so here we are. We have a hell of a conundrum on our hands. And Dr. Nemeth, I turn it over to you for your initial comments.
Well, I mean, you've been warning about this. I've been warning about it for a long time. I think all of us here on the Energy Realities has been like, come on, people, what's going on? And, periodically they have this statement that now we're going to mobilize. Like there was an article on Chatham House from last week that says, this should galvanize the West to build resilience. Oh, it should. They've been talking how it should galvanize resilience for many years. Yeah. And it's interesting. I was at a conference back in 2011, and this is just when everything was starting to take hold in Europe. And they were really pushing this idea of desert tech, which is this huge solar array in North Africa, and they'll ship the energy to Europe and whatnot. And I said, but where are you getting those materials from? Who's going to be building it? Of course, the EU thought they were going to be building all this stuff. And I said, but where are you getting those materials from? Even if you are building it, what's your supply chain? And really, it was crickets, because they weren't really thinking about it in those terms. And I said, look, from an energy security perspective, you're worried about being overly dependent on one source for oil or gas or whatever. But the same thing goes for the supply chains with the critical minerals. And what really bothers me with the lack of forward thinking is, number one, like you pointed out, the environmental groups that prevent the mining and the just trying to get anything done in Western countries. Oh, I don't know what that is.
You okay?
Yeah, there was some weird sound there.
Yeah.
But
I didn't hear it.
It's not
I
my
don't know.
stomach, guys. It is not my stomach. I just want to make that Jerry Nadler is not in the building.
Well, it would be interesting if he were, but I guess what's so frustrating is that there's all these policies for stockpiling and for ensuring resilience within supply chains, and yet we don't have it. And there's now that we're in a position where China can exert this power, just like they did to Japan in 2010, except on a global scale now, because they control so much more of it. And we hear lots of rhetoric and very little action. Like when they were going to friend shore a couple of years ago, I think it was in 2022, 2023. Oh, we're going to friend shore, we're going to do this and that, and nothing happens. So it's like, why is that? And I think at the heart of that matter is permitting, the regulatory structure, and the resistance by environmental groups, and the role of litigation in just kind of slow rolling all of this. And in the end, who's the beneficiary of not allowing the West to build up its supply chains? It's China. And I think we really need to be asking questions in the UK, in Canada, and the United States to some extent, and Europe. What is the pressure and role of China behind the scenes that's supporting these moves to keep Western countries dependent on Chinese supply chains? I think that's a legitimate question that needs to be explored in more detail.
Yes, indeed. I totally agree with that. And Irina Slav, isn't it somewhat ironic that the green groups continue to resist mining for these and processing of these rare earth minerals, since they are so integral to development and manufacture of all kinds of renewable energy projects?
It is kind of ironic, but they're doing what the collective West did 30 or 40 years ago. They thought China would be this low-cost, low labor cost production powerhouse for the West. They could send all their dirty business to China, and China would just keep churning out the things that the collective West needed in technology, in processed raw materials, in everything, which was a huge mistake. How so many people in leadership positions assumed that China will not be building its own economy
and its own military
and its own military, and come to a point where it would be able to respond to pressure from the West. Because let's not kid ourselves. It's not like the US has been very, very peaceful to China for years now. But I see this, lots of China bashing. Okay, you're angry that they've responded, but what did you really expect, people? It was the same. It reminds me of 2022 and when they started pouring sanctions on Russia, almost as if they were prepared in advance. I'm not saying they were, but almost as if they were ready to just start slapping sanctions. And when Russia responded, oh, bad Russia, why do they respond? Well, because of course they would. You can't expect them to not respond. Of course. Now, what Tammy said, that there's been a lot of talk about friendshoring, which is the stupidest word ever. It is really idiotic. that was the right thing to do. Okay, you're very, very late in doing this, but better late than never. But now Tammy says, and I'm sure she's right because she researches this stuff in depth, unlike me, there is very little that is being done because it takes time. China had decades to do it, and it did it. And now these collective West countries, I just love the phrase, are trying to do what China did and trying to do it in a couple of weeks. It's not going to happen. So we're at the, fun around and find out. We're in this sort of situation at the find out stage. And ultimately, I think, or at least I hope, people in political circles everywhere would rediscover the beauty of diplomacy, because there is more than one way to do things. But what Tammy says, that investigations may be in order, whether there are Chinese interests driving this sort of sentiment, although I personally think it's the natural idiocy, the same kind of idiocy that is driving European politics. I know you probably disagree, but they don't have to be mutually exclusive. That has made the European Union discuss the ban on Russian LNG when it is struggling to fill its gas storage ahead of winter, and when imports of Russian oil and gas are rising.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
It's a great question. It's a great question, Stu. What are we doing? What are the national security implications of all this for the United States and the West?
Buckle up. It's actually a really big problem. The China has gone absolutely ballistic, but I feel very confident that President Trump's post on Truth Social said China will be okay, so will we. I'm okay with that. He has a fairly decent track record going on right now, but what I'm seeing is President Xi actually in control of China? And that is a big question, because I'm seeing political behavior in South America that is absolutely more like a kid's tantrum than it is anything else. And so when you take a look at what China is now doing to try to keep control of the critical minerals, it's pretty amazing what underhanded mafia type stuff is going on right now. So I think the biggest thing is when you have the three horsemen of energy dominance of Lee Zeldin, Chris Wright, and Doug Burgum working together, it is going to be the United States regulatory issues. We can't count on Canada. I would love to count on Canada, but good luck trying to process any ore in Canada. It's worse than the United States. And I can't, Tammy, I hope I didn't offend you. I apologize. I love my Canada. I love Canada. Instead of "Oh Canada" when they're singing "Oh Canada," I'm singing "My Canada" because I love Canada. But they're even worse than we are as far as trying to get the ore processed. It is a dirty business processing ore, and we'd better wake up, because we have Gail just posted something here. Yes, Canada is not on side right now. We love Gail.
Although Carney had to show up to the whatever peace signing in the Middle East. I don't know why he's there, honestly.
And Patrick, we love
Patrick. Probably there too, and he did nothing but try to undermine it. So, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love Patrick. Not only did they resist mining, they rolled over and played dead while Obama and Biden steamrolled regulations to implement renewable projects. Mm-hmm. And we have talked about this for years on this podcast, and that is renewables are critical mineral fossil fuel hogs. And it is amazing to me how people think that they're still lower cost energy when it's actually, it makes my head hurt having to explain it over and over again, how much damage the United States is on the hook for right now for wind turbines. I've said it before, 79,000 wind turbines. We have about an $85 billion land reclamation bill coming due very quickly once we get rid of the subsidies. These things are starting to fail. I drive by them in between the houses, and I see all these wind farms in Texas, and the blades are actually starting to wilt. Guess what happens? They're not replacing them as fast. You know why? Because the subsidies have dried up.
Yeah.
They get less productive. So these things are now, they're not going to work nearly as much.
No, that's right. I mean, and they're going to dilapidate, and it's going to become an enormous eyesore in West Texas and all over Oklahoma too, and most parts of the country where these projects exist. For those who may not be aware, the big thing with critical energy minerals with the military is that these minerals are used to manufacture incredibly effective and high-powered magnets that go into most of the sophisticated weapon systems that are used in the military, not just in the United States, but all over the world. They're critical. They're crucial to everything we do in the military. And the fact that, our country has been allowed to deteriorate its national security to become so reliant on China for this need in particular is scandalous. And of course, it's up to now President Trump to try to remedy the situation very quickly. That's not going to be easy to do, but it's one reason we've seen the Pentagon entering into these equity ownership relationships with various miners and also with MP Materials, which is based near the border between California and Nevada and Southern California. That is the only sizable processor of rare earth metals in the United States and manufacturer of those kinds of magnets. So, we're going to have to build that capability. And part of the deal between the Pentagon and MP Materials is that they're going to double or triple their capacity to manufacture these magnets at that facility. But you're going to need many more of those. Okay, it's not a need that a single magnet maker and processor can supply. We're going to need dozens of those kinds of operations in the United States, and we're going to need to have them come up very quickly. So this era of regulatory regimes of the federal government delaying these kinds of projects for decades on end because there might be 10 acres of some endangered buckwheat adjacent to the project, those days are over. And people are going to have to understand that the United States government is going to have to get out of the business of kowtowing to the demands of these radical left-wing climate alarm groups. And it's going to be very controversial here in the United States. Tammy, I assume it'll be controversial in the UK and Canada as well, although I'm not sure the UK government is going to do much about it. I don't know what is the temperature of the Starmer government towards all of this.
The Starmer government is, I don't know what they're thinking. They're so in bed with China, and there's a lot of concerns being raised about its relationship with China. There's this group called the 48 Group, and they were created in 1954 to sort of do trading economic relationships between the UK and China, 1954. And they've been behind the scenes working on different things that have not necessarily been in the best interests of the UK and the Western alliance. And so, for example, there was a spy issue, 2 Chinese spies, they were going to court, and the UK basically said, China's not an enemy state, so drop the charges. So they dropped the charges, and it was like significant spying. And so this is what's blown up in the past week. And then there was the issue with this massive Chinese embassy that they want to build in London. That is just, it'll be catastrophic what they do. It'll be this center for spying. And the Labour government's going to let it go forward. So I don't know. I think UK's compromised. I don't think Canada's any better. Sam Cooper has been doing significant investigation into the sort of relationships behind the scenes by Chinese, I wouldn't say spies, but people who are pushing the agenda for the Chinese government in Canada. And the tentacles are quite deep. So I'm not sure what will transpire, but like when it comes to, if I switch back to the sort of regulatory structure, Canada has said that they want to expand critical minerals mining and so on, and processing. But the problem is dealing with, say, Chinese non-market behavior. So you've got Chinese companies that are backed by the government that can stockpile and then flood the market, which is what happened with cobalt mining in America. So, they wait for Western companies to put in all this investment, then they flood the market and make it so the companies have to fold or sell or whatever. They lose everything, which is why you have the American government now saying, well, we're going to take a 10% share and provide a floor price. So it's like, we can try to say we're going to do all this stuff. I would like to know what's going to happen with litigation, because even if they say, well, we're going to expedite this process to make sure that we can do these kinds of things, the minute something gets approved, it'll go to court. And how long does court take? And so then you can drag it out. And then the investors are like, well, this isn't really, why should I hang around for this? So I don't know. It's like that road in Alaska where they've been holding it up. And then finally Trump said, no, we're going to build this road. I'm waiting for the litigation to kick in before they can even put the boots on the ground for that. And with respect, just to finish up my point with what Irina was saying, I think China takes advantage of the incompetence and the idiocy in Western governments. And so you're right. I don't know if they're not necessarily directing stuff. I think they help support those who are behaving in an idiotic manner, because then it's like, well, I get complete cover just by supporting this sort of
because the Western political elites have put themselves into this situation when anyone with the savvy to take advantage would. Sorry. Excuse me.
Whoops, what happened? But
I have that effect
isn't
on
this where
people.
the term useful idiots arose? Vladimir Lenin's famous quote that U.S. liberals are happy fools and useful idiots, that we can use to our advantage. That's from 110 years ago, I guess, but it's still.
And the fellow travelers. And you have the fellow travelers. So like Rodney McInnes made a point about like it's a Fabian thing. But there is a Fabian society in the UK, and they're the ones that the Labour Party came out of. So Keir Starmer and all those guys are part of the Fabian society, which is this kind of incremental move towards socialism, communism, whatever. And the Labour Party is an unabashed socialist party. And so if you have ideological alignment with a country like China, then you're a fellow traveler, right? Even if there's people who are useful idiots who, whether they think they're getting an economic gain out of it or whatever, but there's also those who agree with, maybe the China. How many times have we heard these Western leaders say, wow, I admire how China can get things done. Why can't we be more like that? Why don't we have more state-owned things? That's not necessarily a good thing. And so, what are we sacrificing in order to compete with a country like China that's willing to throw government money behind things in order to distort markets? So I think this is the conundrum that Trump has found himself in. How do we compete with these non-market actors And so then now we're in this kind of public-private partnership that's going on and having floor prices. So I don't know if that's the best solution long term, but maybe that's what needs to be done temporarily at this point.
Irina, did you have before you were interrupted? You were
Sorry.
in the middle. That's okay.
What was I saying? I can't remember. That, yeah, we don't need to, I think people have this tendency to create stories, which is how conspiracy theories start, because they are well structured. I don't think reality is so well structured, and appealing as the idea might be that somebody is whoever, China or deep state or something like this, orchestrating absolutely everything. It's not, because no one entity has the capacity and the resources to orchestrate absolutely everything. So they do what Tammy suggested that China is doing, is taking advantage. And it's not just China. This is just one example. We need to kick the idiots out of government, especially if, as Tammy said, there are investigations showing actual links between Chinese interests and Canadian politicians. I mean, we really putting these people in.
Yeah.
Well, our problem in the United States is we tend to replace the idiots with more idiots, right? Like we're
We
about
do
to
the
do with the
same
governor
thing in
of California.
Bulgaria, and apparently
Yeah.
they're doing the same thing in Canada. Not to mention the UK. I don't know why this is, but we keep doing it. And I guess the old refrain we have been repeating for years, ever since this podcast started, it will have to get much worse before it starts getting better, little by little. I'm sorry, but
It's sad but true.
Seems inevitable at this point. Yeah.
Stu, can it get any worse?
Yes, but I think we are on track. I want to take just a moment. Tomorrow, the staff is absolutely releasing the interview that I did with General Flynn. And I mean, General Flynn had some outstanding points on what it's going to take to fix the energy type stuff. With your permission, I'd love to play this about 30 seconds here.
Okay.
Let's get it going here.
So the president is going to have a massive America First energy summit and then plow new ground. This is politics usual. This is the takeover of our country. The president of the United States declares a national emergency and says, for federal elections, here's how we're going to do it. Let's fight for peace instead of continuing this long drawn out war.
Wow.
So
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a great conversation. And I'll tell you, being invited to go to the Washington, D.C. with David Blackman is kind of fun, so that we go visit with them about their policies. It is a big deal. But what he brought up was it's energy, politics are all related. And we have got to get rid of those voting machines. And the Dominion voting machines, I think, were just bought by a new group of people that happen to vote for Trump. That's going to cause everybody to go to paper ballots.
Oh my God. I mean, there's hysteria among the American left over that right now.
Liberty Vote. It was bought by Liberty Vote.
Yeah.
You can just throw out a bunch of paper ballots too. I mean, it's easy to manipulate. That's what they did in Moldova. I've seen in Bulgarian elections this happen on live streaming, because all the ballot counting stations need to live stream the counting of the votes. And I saw them pick one up and throw it away.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We've got to eliminate mail-in ballots. For elections to be really secure, we have to eliminate mail-in ballots. But getting rid, or at least hamstringing, the Dominion systems and their algorithms, in which we know for an absolute fact that they often don't even count the votes. They just perform these calculations, these logarithmic calculations of what the vote was anticipated to be, and turn that in to the Secretary of State. So if we can put an end to that, that's a big piece of the problem. We are at the halfway mark. And any last words from anyone on the rare earth minerals discussion?
Yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to Patricia Adams, who's a Canadian researcher who has she's written commentary for the Financial Post, Epoch Times, and whatever. But she's produced like 2 or 3 different reports for the Global Warming Policy Foundation in the UK. One is called China's Energy Dream, and the other is called The Red and the Green: China's Useful Idiots. And she really takes apart a lot of and tracks how all this stuff has been working over the past, 20 years or so. Really, I highly recommend her reports there just to understand it better.
Irina, any last words?
No, I ranted all I wanted to rant about.
Stu, on the rare earth minerals, any last words?
As long as we can get Lee Zeldin to really hammer in the United States the regulatory processes so we can process, we have months to get this fixed, not years.
Yeah, it's got to go fast. Just a shout out to our friend Robert Bryce for those who want more details on what's happening with China and the U.S. on this rare earth issue. Robert had an excellent piece detailing the elements of the new crackdown by China that he published on his Substack on Friday. I believe it was also republished at Real Clear Energy. It was really good. I also published a lengthy post on my Substack that's not behind the paywall that kind of goes through the history of the last 5 years on this issue that, people are free to read. There's no cost to that. And there's a lot of other good information out there on Substack about this. So with that, let's move to our articles of the week. Dr. Nemeth.
Okay, well, I guess the first one I'll go with is the Fatty Birol op-ed in Time magazine. Basically doing, I guess I'll read the title here. I gotta make it bigger. Nations rallied to stop the 1970s oil crisis. It's time to do the same for critical minerals. And here he's making a pitch that the IEA, the International Energy Agency, is the place for international Western coordination of the critical mineral supply chain. And he pitches that they've been building this up for the past 5 years or so. And they're really what they can make this work like they did during the energy crisis in 73 and 79, and sort of during the first Gulf War. I don't know. I think he's trying to remain relevant, and he's been pitching this for a long time. And I guess he figures now's the time to get the Trump administration and the other Western countries to pony up cash to do it. So,
well, I think at least notionally, he's correct. The IEA would be a logical institution to kind of lead that sort of rally, but I think it would have to be under new leadership and not his leadership. He's lost all credibility with anyone who understands anything about this. So I just laugh every time I see his name anymore.
I know. And, honestly, it's kind of putting the cart before the horse, because his pitch is that once countries have critical minerals, the IEA can help manage when there's a cutoff, like what China's doing. But the Western countries don't have a supply. So how can they coordinate the trading of these supplies when they don't have them yet? So until you take care of the regulatory thing, limit the litigation from environmental groups and so on, you're not going to have a supply in which to trade. So, interesting idea. I don't think he's the guy to do it. I think you need a more credible person in charge of the IEA who hasn't been, being a sycophant to the transition. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the near future. And then the other article was by Dennis McConaughey, where in the Calgary Herald, where he calls it Carney's dead end for Alberta oil. And he's talking about Mark Carney's repeated admonition that the only way Alberta can sell more oil is if it's decarbonized. And he kind of goes through what that means. What does decarbonized oil mean? And he talks about the Pathways Alliance, which is the 6 large oil sands producers, and how they put all this money into how you would capture the emissions from production, build a pipeline, put it into fields, and all this different kinds of stuff. And he makes a really great point where he says, no credible entity is willing to pay for it. And so these companies would have to absorb all that cost, which they can't recover because oil prices are set in world markets. Nobody else is doing this. Only Canada would be doing it. And so you're already pricing Canadian oil. Like, how are they supposed to make any profit out of this when all of their profit would be turned into decarbonizing just to allow to keep going? So he's like, do you expect the government to subsidize this, or do you expect the companies to do it? And if you listen to the environmental groups, they expect the companies to absorb this cost, because they're like, why are they paying shareholders? Why are they paying dividends? It's like, because that's why people that's why people invest in these companies. Pension plans invest in these companies to get a return on investment, not to break even. So, but the environmental groups don't think in terms of capitalism. They think a company shouldn't be making profits. And if they do make profits, those profits should be determined by government. You're allowed to make 2%. And, so it's very frustrating to see that this is the rhetoric. And, Carney's been very cagey on details. So we'll see what happens in the November budget.
He's a cagey dude.
He's a cagey dude. Yeah. That's it. And you can find me on Substack, the nemethReport.substack.com. And my podcasts are there. And I put links to my publications and other publications, in addition to writing my own things on Substack.
Wonderful. Oh, I'm next. Okay. Foreign billionaire pours millions into U.S. politics to push radical green agenda. Yes, well, this is becoming a common tale. There's all kinds of foreign billionaires. This is about one particular one, but I mean, this is a pretty common theme in the U.S. Climate alarmist movement. Much of their funding is coming in from China today. 20 years ago, it was coming in from Saudi Arabia first, which saw U.S. natural shale gas as a natural competitor to their markets. And then it was coming in from Russia because Putin saw the same competition coming in from shale oil and gas to his market share. And now, it's coming in from billionaires from all over the world who just want to kill the oil and gas business in the United States. And so this is no surprise, and just another in a long line of stories like this. And there's a couple more on the next slide, I think, Stu. China versus America on rare earth and critical energy minerals. That's the piece I posted Friday on my Substack. Again, it's not behind the paywall, so it's open to everyone. And then this third gem comes from Ferrari, which slashed its 2030 electric car plan in half. They were going to be 40% electric vehicles in compliance with EU regulatory demands by 2030. And now they've said, well, we can't do that because nobody wants to buy electric Ferraris. So now we're only committing to 20%. I'm sure in the next year or two, we'll see them cut it even further than that, because who wants to buy a $250,000 electric vehicle? When you can get a perfectly fine gas-powered model for much less than that from another maker. This is just emblematic of how the EU's regulatory, this obsession over carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is destroying the European car industry. And, and the other side of it is they're letting all these cheaper Chinese electric vehicles come onto the market. And these car makers in the EU sector are going to all be gone unless something changes, and they'll all be gone very quickly. So anyway, it's a sad situation, I think. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Can I add, like, when you're talking about the Ferrari one, there was a story about this Australian mining company, Fortescue, and the guy who owns it is like, he's suddenly become this green whatever guy. He signed on to the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, but he was going to have the UK produce these electric mining trucks. And then he was invited to China, and he went to China, and their entire production is robotic. Like, they have humanoid robots that put it all together. So he said, you know what? I'm going to have it all designed in the UK. They will make the prototypes, and then I'm going to turn commercial production over to China.
Oh, come on.
So here we are. We're going to be all green and whatever, and oh yeah, the West and all this kind of thing. And he's going to have China build all these autonomous electric mining trucks. What could go wrong?
Yeah, just like green hydrogen ambitions. Then it's completely lost. Yeah, they slash their investment plans for green hydrogen, and he keeps hyping it. Come on, stop.
Yep.
By the way, on green hydrogen, I'm hearing that at least one of our big oil companies that has hydrogen hub plans, at least on the books right now, will soon be announcing a dramatic scaling back of that endeavor.
Really?
And so there's quite a few of those projects on the books right now. So it's anyone can guess which big oil company that is.
I wonder if the hydrogen corridor in the EU is actually going to get built. I have a feeling that the EU's going to fail before that happens.
I haven't seen anything about it recently. They're busy now with Russian LNG bans. Leave them alone.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah.
Irina, it's your turn.
Yeah, I don't actually have stories because my dentist only called me at 8 last night, but I have a couple of stories I saw today, both very funny. I think these are Stu's stories. Stu, do you want to go first?
Oh, no, these are yours off of your Substack, but I can go ahead and go if you want.
Sure, go on.
Okay.
Why not? Funny enough.
China and Iran seal oil for infrastructure deal to bypass U.S. sanctions. This phenomenal lady has once said, sanctions don't work as intended. And I believe that lady is Irina Slav. And Irina, I absolutely love that quote, T-shirt and all. Yeah. China and Iran seal oil for infrastructure. This is huge because they are trading outside the U.S. dollar. And again, you weaponize the U.S. dollar and people find ways around it. I also did not have Phil Mickelson on my bingo card. He is a famous golf guy, and he has said, if you want to save the beaches in California, drill for oil, because it is a scientific fact. There's so much oil in California that if you don't release the pressure, tar balls won't show up on the beach anymore if you actually drill. I did not have tar balls or Phil Mickelson on my bingo card this week. So
anyway. Mike Umbro, our friend Mike Umbro, told you and me the same thing on our podcast episode last week, right? About the
you bet. Yeah. And so you can find me on theenergynewsbeat.substack.com or energynewsbeat.com, and we have a lot of fun there.
Irina, you said you had a couple of stories you wanted to talk about.
Yes. The first story from Financial Times is that Greenpeace has threatened the Crown Estate with a lawsuit because it says the Crown Estate, which is the company, the entity that manages the royal family's properties, was asking too much money for offshore seabed leases for offshore turbines. And this has made building offshore wind turbines very expensive, which is bad for consumers and bad for wind power developers. So bad, Crown Estate. And if you don't mend your ways, we're going to take you to court. This is what Greenpeace says. So we have a new culprit for exorbitant prices for offshore wind energy, and that's the royal British family, featuring King Charles, which is such a staunch defender of the planet, of the environment, and he's very green and everything. So what does King Charles have to say for himself? We will never know. The second story was something about the European Union and energy, but it just slipped my mind. I'm trying to find it. It was in Reuters, and it wasn't about the LNG ban, but I don't know. I mean, the story I wrote today for Substack was about gas and how Germany is going to suffer economic losses of 40 billion euro if the winter is colder than usual, and it cannot bring its storage to 90%. Even if it does bring its storage to 90%, however, it will still suffer losses to the tune of 14 billion euro, which is better than 40 billion euro, because that's the difference. That the difference of 24 billion euro in losses is the difference between no economic growth and recession, guys.
Holy smokes. Holy smokes. Well, but that can be cured by that donut of prosperity that
I never checked.
Yeah.
I didn't have time. What's the donut of prosperity?
It's all these stupid, ridiculous left-wing notions that you can replace economic growth with environmental purity, and it all comes out in the wash, right? Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You know what I think of that donut of prosperity? I think of a hemorrhoid donut that you sit on.
I know, that's what I was thinking.
Dr. Nemeth, I am so glad that you and I are on the same track there.
The donut of preparation H.
Yeah, hemorrhoid. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, you know what's interesting, Irina, when you talk about Greenpeace wanting to sue the Crown Estate or whatever for its offshore thing, that money actually goes to the UK Treasury. So it's like the UK government gets royalties, which helps plug the black hole in the UK finances, which apparently we all have. And so then I'm thinking, well, they're complaining that maybe they need a sovereign wealth fund. I would suggest that Crown Estate is the equivalent of a sovereign wealth fund, but instead of investing that money, it just goes to the UK Treasury, which they then spend on whatever.
Where does the money of the Crown Estate come from, except from properties that generate income, such as the seabed?
Right. So the Crown Estate is like it's like royalties that a government gets, and it's held in lieu of. So it's like royal, but it's owned by the monarch in right of the crown. But it's actually, the money goes to the UK Treasury.
So basically, Greenpeace wants less money to go into the finances of the country, because
so it would seem.
Well,
so it would seem.
Maybe they don't know this, but I'm sure they do. They
think they know.
Decent lawyers, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Greenpeace hasn't had a great record in litigation over the last year. They got hit with that $660 million judgment last year, so they're looking to recover some of those proceeds.
Well, but they did win in the EU and in Norway, where they backed court cases against oil and gas development, where countries that have a transition plan are now obligated to do it. Otherwise, they're affecting the human rights and future of children or whatever.
Yeah. We really need new laws.
Yeah, so they've had successes, and Greenpeace was successful in getting the approvals of North Sea oil and gas projects revoked in the UK. So the Conservative government had approved stuff, and then Greenpeace sued them and said it violates the net zero plan, and those approvals were revoked. So.
Well,
Greenpeace.
litigation is never ending in the United States as well, but we've been having some good results in this climate lawfare thing that's been managed by the Sher Edling firm out in San Francisco for the past 6-7 years, and they keep losing case after case after case, and eventually, I think the Supreme Court's going to have to jump in and put an end to that nonsense. But they'll just come up with the next campaign after that.
Yeah.
And I think we may have run out our string here. We're 10 minutes early, but
very efficient today.
We have another topic we want to raise, or wait until next week? Give Stu 10 minutes to recover before his next podcast at the top of the hour.
You got to run. So, no, I think it's a lot of fun. We've had a lot of great comments again from our great listeners. A shout out to all of them. Patrick, Gail, Rodney, Tom, a bunch of great folks out there. So
thanks, everyone. Thanks for the comments.
And Tom Butts, who is a new name on our list. Welcome, Tom.
Hi, Tom.
And thank you, everyone, for joining us. We appreciate it. We know we conflicted, I think, with the end of President Trump's speech to the Knesset this morning, which was wildly entertaining. And everyone should go watch the first 30 minutes of it, because it's better than any comedy routine you'll ever see on late night television. And with that, I wish everyone a wonderful week, and we will reconvene this panel again next Monday at the regular time.
Have a great week.